So, needless to say, I think there's a lot of different elements that kind of come into that. And in particular, I think one of the bigger elements, if Jordan, you want to take this one,
Yeah.
lobbying,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
We've already seen how the voting system can just be tweaked and manipulated through the politicizing of things, and just how the actual system itself
Yeah.
works for elections. But we're getting into a little bit of the human aspect of it. So with lobbying, do you mind taking away with
Yeah.
that?
So there's a wide variety of lobbying groups, and maybe we'll just look at it like as a sense of these are individual interest groups that approach government. I shouldn't say like individuals, but either like in our case, it would approach like the representative of a party, and um, we will give you like if you do this for us, we'll give you funding for your next campaign. Certain degree, you get some money for to run your campaign, make some commercials, and it can be good, it can be bad, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, we don't. Like, it's usually left up to morality, which we all know there's lots of loopholes in that in our system and just in the world in general. But where you have the interests of powerful companies and big corporations that persuade governments to their cause. So we know a lot of people are very well aware that the energy sector and the fossil fuel sector they have very big lobbyists in the United States, and they
I
have
think the fair thing would be everywhere. Any
well,
in
yeah,
like
I shouldn't say I shouldn't say
Canada,
the United
yeah,
States. They're everywhere.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, they're
No,
yeah.
sorry, I cut you off, but yeah,
No, no, no.
just to be fair to it, we have the energy industry is the second largest industry in Canada, so
Yeah,
you can
they're
best believe.
definitely yeah. Well, you could argue almost every developed country between them, pharmaceutical companies. You also have like environmental lobbyists as well,
Yeah, because I
which
was gonna
some of them.
say lobbying really, to be fair to it, it refers to interest groups that are putting their influence or their dollars, like whatever
Yes,
it may be, however their influence is, hard and soft power,
into
into trying to convince government to
to
support
enact
their cause, right?
yeah,
And
or
that
to
could be
enact laws
things,
to support their cause. Yeah,
yeah, right? Like back in the day, the tobacco industry was huge into lobbying. So
yeah,
regulations on tobacco and things like that
yeah,
weren't in place. Now those things have changed over time because the lobbying groups that are against like secondhand smoke and things like that
yeah. Are
have
now more
really,
powerful than the smoking lobbyist.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So to your original point, there are pros and cons on it. Like it's not all that every lobbying group, right? You might have the teachers federation, right? Like
yeah.
okay, like your education lobbying
Teachers
groups, right?
union or whatever
Yeah,
here.
there's
Yeah,
some positives out of that. I think that you can make some arguments that at times
like
that,
everything in the system, it's not
yeah,
perfect.
yeah,
Yeah, far from it.
exactly,
Yeah,
right,
and then a big thing too is like public opinion doesn't have any sway on it. It all, well, at least
well,
for the most part, it doesn't. But
yeah,
money's the motivating factor in a place like the States, and even here.
yeah, I think wherever you see um lobbying, money plays a huge part of it, right? Because
Yeah,
it takes money to do even
we could
soft
even
power
argue
type of
here
things.
because it's harder for parties to get funding in Canada than in the United States. So lobbying actually does play a
Yes,
big role here.
yeah, yeah. Well, in the United States, it's pretty easy to get money, but but
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
both countries have certain regulations that do control how that money can trickle down to you.
and gets
Like
distributed. Yeah.
we even have things like whatever you want to have a dinner with the prime minister while what's that gala or whatever
Yeah,
that they all pay.
jeez, yeah,
I
I
don't
keep
know,
thinking of that
forget what
stupid
it's called, but
Met Gala that the celebrities
no,
go
yeah,
to.
it's not that, but it's a version of something like that in the
But
sense
for
of,
politicians, yeah.
yeah, exactly. You can pay money to have a plate of food and sit down
Yeah, and talk
with
about your business and how you might,
exactly,
yeah.
right? So, um, money obviously plays a big part of it. But you also have the kind of how I mentioned like the soft power of it, where you may not have it that I'm funding a political campaign based off of my business and they're going to promote my ideology. But you also might have where we see interest groups and lobbyist groups that run campaign ads, or not even campaign ads, just ads based around the
Ads. Yeah.
government, right?
Yeah.
And they're trying to spin a certain narrative. And if you're watching that ad as a whatever, you're watching TV or watching the news or surfing the internet, um, those those ads that are kind of promoting a certain narrative,
Yeah.
uh, that's another way that those lobbyist groups um, kind of promote their ideology, right?
And their message.
The
Yeah.
the teachers union who wants whatever better pay for teachers may have a commercial on the radio
Yeah.
that's talking about the government wants to
Mothers
cut
Against Drunk
middle
Driving.
classes.
Here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you see it all the time with Mad, like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That's a great example, right?
Yeah.
Um, they're not talking to, especially in a democracy, and I guess that's really where it always really comes into play. But in a democracy, because we as individuals do have some decision making power,
Yeah.
if you can convince the voters to get behind a cause, you can have the pressure be put on government so
Instead
that
of, yeah.
instead of like actually directly going to government saying, "Hey, I want you to do this," you could just say, "Hey, I'm going to go to your constituents and tell them they should
Yeah.
call
And
you up and do this,"
yeah,
right?
if you want them to vote for you again, you're going to have to work along the lines of our interests because
Mhm.
now we've swayed
Yeah.
the public to it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're almost the politicians that don't actually run for office, right? They do the exact same kind of things where I'm trying to convince you of one thing or another,
Yeah.
um, in order to kind of control the outcomes, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, sorry, were you going to say something else
No,
or?
no, no, no.
Okay. Well, so I think kind of going off of that, right? We've talked about things with lobbying, and how those things do, like everything, have pros and cons, but they can potentially go off the rails, and that where kind of
I was
comes
going to
into
say,
play with checks and balances, right?
correct. Especially when you get one of the bad ones.
Yeah.